Approve. Second.
Motion by Steve, second by Dave to approve the agenda. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Invocation, the River Church Hutchinson. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is John Snyder. I'm here for Pastor David Blair. Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to live in such a great city. And Father, I ask you in the name of Jesus that your wisdom would prevail in this meeting. I thank you for your peace and safety over this city and over every member of the leadership of this city, our police department, our fire department, EMS, and over every citizen. And I give you all the praise and glory for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Next is pledges of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Recognition of gifts, donations, and community service to the city. Does anybody have anything tonight? Alrighty, moving on. Public comment, citizens addressing the council, just please come forward, state your name and address. Alright, approval of minutes. We have the regular meeting minutes of February 28th, 2023.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Pat, second by Dave to approve the minutes. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Consent agenda. This will be done with one motion unless somebody pulls something off for discussion. A is approval of resolution number 15575, resolution transferring funds to the 2022 construction fund, the general fund, and the capital improvement fund. B is approval of resolution number 15576, resolution transferring American Rescue Plan Act monies to the capital project fund. C is approval of resolution number 15578, amending resolution number 15451, transferring from the Community Improvement Fund to the 2013 Debit Fund, Service Fund. D is approval of resolution number 15579, resolution transferring funds to the 2020 Construction Fund. And E is approval of resolution number 15580, traffic control resolution. That's no parking, Boulder Street, Roberts Road. F, consideration for approval of alley improvement project, letting number 3, project number 23-03 and 23-04. Two resolutions underneath there. We have resolution number 15583, resolution declaring costs to be assessed in order in preparation of proposed assessments, and resolution number 15584, resolution for hearing on proposed assessment. G is approval of resolution number 15587, resolution authorizing an interfund loan from the Downtown Loan Fund for advance of certain costs in connection with the tax increment financing district number 4-16. H is approval of purchasing, planning, and building department software with Brightly Software Incorporated. And I is claims appropriation and contract payments. Anybody want anything pulled off for discussion?
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Pat, second by Dave to approve the consent agenda. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right. we do have public hearings, but we'll jump down to the police department year-end report. That was, sorry, Tom. Sorry, Chief. Sorry, Chief, my polygrips slipped a little bit there. Chief Jefferson, good evening.
Just for the public's hearings are scheduled at 6 p.m. and so that's when those will be conducted. So,
All right, Mayor and Council, good evening. I'm here obviously to present the year-end report for the police services for the year 2022. So I thought what I would do is just, because hopefully you've all had a chance to review the year-end report that was in your packets, but just kind of maybe for the public more than anything, just describe our department a little bit and then just pull out some highlighted stats for the year. So currently, or at the end of December, our staff was at 42 personnel, 25 police officers, 2 of those are part-time, our support professionals, full-time 7, we have no part-time support professionals, and then as you're all also aware, we do have a hospital security program which provides unlicensed personnel providing security services out at the hospital. And in there we have 3 full-time security officers and 7 part-time security officers. Our fleet, we have 7 marked squad cars currently in our fleet. When we receive our 2 new squad cars this year, we'll have 3 that are actually hybrid squad cars, which we hope will provide a significant cost savings in fuel to the city. But that remains to be seen, obviously, because we haven't implemented them yet. We have 4 administrative squad cars and then 2 special use vehicles, one of them being our command post, and then the other being our tactical response vehicle, which is an equipment vehicle that goes along on all of our tactical responses. And then lastly, 1 utility trailer that we use to store and then also transport our traffic control devices, cones, barricades, that type of thing. So for 2022, we had 15,709 calls for service, which is a slight decrease from 2021 and actually kind of a 3-year downward trend in calls for service. I was in front of you last year blaming that on COVID. Now that we've had a subsequent year of that, I think it actually has more to do with how we're reporting our calls for service, and we used to do that through dispatch. Our individuals that are still taking calls at the window in our lobby are still taking those calls. They're just not being recorded as an incident any longer because all that gets recorded at the county. So I think that slight decrease, it may have had something to do with COVID, but I think it's probably more the result of not reporting those incidents that are coming into the lobby. In the report, there was a graph kind of illustrating our busiest times. And so our busiest time frame over the course of the year is 11 a.m. to 6 p.m., which makes sense. It's usually that business hours type thing where we're getting those calls. Our busiest month is May. However, that summertime time frame is generally the busiest time of the year, and I mean it can fluctuate year to year on that. And then obviously Friday is our busiest day of the week, which one would guess would be the case. But again, those weekend days, that kind of that time frame is probably a more accurate description of when we're busiest. Some crime statistics. So NIBRS is something that we went to in 2020, halfway through the year. It's the incident-based reporting system that the federal government went to. So this is the second full year of us reporting our crime statistics to NIBRS. And in NIBRS, there's Group A crimes and Group B crimes. If you recall, from the way it used to be done, it was Part 1 and Part 2 crimes. Not that it really matters a whole lot, but they define as Group A, Group B. Group A is 24, has 24 crime categories that are with 52 offenses within those categories. And essentially those are the crimes that tend to be the more serious crimes when you think about crime, but it's also the crimes that the federal government wants the most information on. And then if you notice in the year-end report in your packet, there's a list of all those crimes in there, if you're curious. And then Group B is only 11 offenses listed under Group B. And again, that's just information that the federal government wants, but they, all they really want is arrest data on that stuff. They don't really care to get into the minutia on those. Probably more explanation than was needed, but I think it's kind of interesting to know those kind of things. So our most frequent crimes, that's generally the question that I get asked most often is, well, what is the problem in Hutchinson? What is our biggest problem in Hutchinson? Or what do you see the most often? So our most frequent crimes, damage to property crimes, theft crimes, and assaults. I put drug or controlled substance offenses up here, not because it's one of our greatest, doesn't occur the most often, but the drug addiction, drug abuse, behavior, there's a correlation between that and our top three. So to say that it's not a problem because it's not one of our top crime reported would be a bit misleading, because it's probably the main reason our top three are there, if that makes sense. For 2022, we had 323 total arrests. 215 of those were in Group A and B that are reported to NIBRS. The roughly other 100 arrests are the result of warrant arrests, and then also anytime we sign a formal complaint that's in our records, that's considered an arrest at that point. So that's where those other crimes come in. So roughly about one a day, but generally speaking, may not have any arrests and then 5 in one day, but so that gives you a general idea of where we're at. Our patrol staff citations issued, 730 citations issued last year. I think it's important to know that citations aren't just generally generated from traffic stops. There's a number of other reasons why we would give citations. As a matter of fact, snow emergencies, if we issue a citation for parking or whatever, that would be included in this statistic as well. And then also 1,448 verbal warnings. The majority of those do, however, come off traffic stops, which is a good proactive policing tool that we continue to use. Officers also responded to 261 traffic crashes in the city last year, and thankfully only about 30 of those were personal injury crashes. And moving on to our school resource officer, important program that we're lucky to, partnership with the school district that we're lucky to have. Our school resource officer, it's probably better described as calls for service at the school, one of the school district buildings. That was 298 calls for service. And then I've itemized there 119 at the high school, 74 middle school, so on. And that could be something as simple as just going there over a lost child, or it could be a crime that's happened on one of their campuses or something to that effect. So go for something very minor to actually a criminal activity. And child protection is another one of our we have one officer assigned to child protection. A lot of cities rely on their sheriff's office to investigate child protection, and again, we're fortunate enough in this city to have someone local or internally that investigates those. In 2022, our child protection investigator received 294 intakes. Intakes are essentially reports from social services or from the public regarding child protection. And the majority of those are for abuse, and that can be either abuse by neglect or actual physical abuse. So unfortunately, that seems to be a large number. And fortunately, however, most of those are screened out through the process. They're investigated and determined that it's either not an issue or the issue was minor enough where maybe some, I guess, coaching, for lack of a better term, would be the appropriate response. And then our drug task force. So Hutchinson, the city of Hutchinson belongs to the Southwest Metro Drug Task Force. Hutchinson PD provides one agent to that task force. Their final report isn't complete as of yet, so I didn't want to give a whole lot of statistics off their draft report, but their investigations were a little bit down last year. And the biggest reason for that is just the lack of staff. We're actually really fortunate here at Hutchinson because I think our staff has been pretty stable over the last couple of years. The other members of the task force aren't that lucky, so one of the places they pull to backfill positions at home is from their agent that's on the task force. So normally we have staffing of 5 to 6 agents, and in 2022 the norm was 2 to 3, and our agent will happen to be one of those 2 to 3. So they still did a significant amount of work for 2 to 3 agents, but obviously they were down just a little bit. Some of the most common drugs that are investigated, obviously cannabis still continues to be the number one, and cannabis and its derivatives, so THC products like edibles and wax, and methamphetamine also continues to be one of the more common drugs that is being seen out there. But there are some newer drugs that we're hearing about in the news, and they're starting to investigate. Everybody's heard of fentanyl now. Probably one of the, although we're probably not seizing a lot of it, it's a really dangerous drug, as you're all aware. A very small dose can be fatal. Agents working with it, officers working and come in contact with it, absorbs through their skin. So if they're not careful, I mean, they can overdose just by coming in contact with stuff. So it's a pretty dangerous thing. Also, LSD is starting to come back for some reason, but they're starting to see a lot of that. And then also hallucinogenic mushrooms are also kind of on the rise back. But that's what they're seeing at the task force. Our hospital security program, as I mentioned earlier, it's designed to be a cost-neutral partnership with the hospital to provide security services by unlicensed security officers. That's gone very well, continues to go well. We're at the point where we're going to be negotiating a new contract with the hospital, which I don't see any problems with going forward. The exciting part, I think, is Health Partners Corporate is starting to bring a lot more technology into their hospitals as far as providing security to patients and staff, and they want to bring us along with that. So our hospital security officers are going to be getting training and then also be able to use some pretty high-tech security pieces that they would never have access to just relying on our resources. So that's kind of a nice thing. Last year, 1,112 calls for service at the hospital last year by our hospital security. Now, again, that doesn't mean that's an out of control person at the hospital 1,000 times last year. That's anything from escorting a patient from one end of the building to the other. But it obviously does come with also fairly violent incidents that happen at the hospital that they're called to help with. As a matter of fact, I think we've injured more employees at the hospital last year than we did the rest of our staff. So, which is another exciting thing, or why it's exciting that we're getting extra training from the hospital to hopefully prevent that. And then just our Citizens Police Academy, we reintroduced it in 2022. We used to do it quite frequently, and then we stopped doing it for about 10 years. Something that we wanted to start again, so we started it again in 2022. We had 8 participants in class, a little bit down from what we were accustomed to, but it was still considered to be a successful program. We postponed doing anything this year because normally we run from January into March. And just with the unknowns with the new facility, we didn't know where we'd be. And actually, we've been quite busy with that. We just postponed it. So hopefully, maybe the end of 2023 or early 2024, we'll reestablish again the Citizens Police Academy. And then just lastly, goals that we have at the police department, or I have personally for the police department, obviously completion of the construction on the new PD and the subsequent move. The implementation of our lexical project. I spoke with you a little bit about that last council meeting, about our policy and procedure project and using national best practices to create policy and then implementing those and training them. So we hope to have that policy or that project done by June. And then kind of the main one that's on my plate is update the City of Hutchinson's emergency operations plan. Once we get that done, it's a fairly significant project, but once we get it done, then we'll also provide training for the rest of the city staff. And that's something that you as a council will probably be invited to as well. And then lastly, we're implementing new Axon and Taser equipment. For those of you that are around 5 years ago when we initiated our Axon program with body cam, fleet, our vehicle cameras, and then also tasers, that contract now has come to an end. We've renewed it. And this is the beginning of that new project. So we have all new tasers, all new cameras, all new body cams, and that type of thing. So that, matter of fact, we just had trained some of the training on it today. That should be implemented sometime here in the next month or so. The taser portion of it, the fleet or the vehicle camera side of it is going to be probably complete sometime in October. And that's on Axon. That's not necessarily on us. That's all I have. Spoke fast. Any questions?
Tom, maybe just because I know it's the one question I get all the time, maybe just give an update on where we're at with our police station.
Sure. So the initial plan, or at least the most recent plan, was for them to hand the keys over to us, middle of March, maybe third week in March. Obviously, that's here now, and don't have it on my key ring yet. So we're making great progress. Just final finishes now. I think the hope is that we'll be moving late April, early May, maybe. Council meetings always fall the night before our update meeting, so it's hard for me to give a recent update because it's always 2 weeks old. But for the most part, yes, all the final finishes, the glass are going in as we speak. Once that's in, then it's just really balancing the HVAC, getting all the lock sets changed, making sure the security or access is there. There's some final stuff that's going to be done outside if the snow ever melts. But for the most part, I think we will be end of April, early May, either moving or at least have the keys and then completing what they call punch lists, which going through doing inspections, hey, this needs to be fixed, this needs to be fixed or completed. And as a matter of fact, they're going to start creating those punch lists tomorrow when they're out here.
Then there's a plan for, I actually had an email today asking if we're going to do an open house tour.
Sure.
That is planned in the future.
Yep, absolutely. So when we have a date, it's kind of hard to plan those things too far in advance because we don't have a date. But when we do have a date, the plan is to do a series of open houses, and some of those, kind of by the way it sounds, it will be for the public. It will be open to the public. It's their building. They're the ones that paid for it. They should be able to come in and see what their money bought them. But it's pretty impressive. I feel very fortunate to be able to work in that space when the time comes. I guess I have you guys to thank for that. But any other questions?
Chief,
Yes,
I have a question on,
you bet.
it's relatively simple. We're dealing with a time where there's a lot of PTSD trauma issues
Yes.
going on. Can you briefly explain what we do for the officers in our department for their mental health and for those kind of issues?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, when I was appointed to chief, one of my main objectives was really to start initiating a wellness-based program for our officers. One of the things we initiated right away was what we call a checkup from the neck up. Once a year, every officer has to sit in front of a counselor. They can sit on their hands and say nothing, or they can have the opportunity to say whatever they want to this person. And then the city provides for them to have follow-up services after that initial meeting, if they so desire, at no charge to them and completely anonymous. So what happens there is the city just gets billed by a person number. So that's one of the programs that we have. In building the new building, wellness, officer wellness was one of the main principles in the design. So as a part of that, we have a fitness center in there. We also have spaces within the building that allow for officers to kind of just decompress and regenerate and continue their shift. And then obviously we have, if we have an issue with a PTSD type situation, obviously there's services that the city officer offers as well through EAP. The nice thing about the checkup from the neck up, the person that we use for that is very focused on people in the police or law enforcement industry. It's kind of a unique perspective on that, and so we contract with her exclusively, and so there's specific ways that she treats PTSD.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One last question for me. You know, we just went through 5 years with our body cameras. So looking back, having implemented that 5 years ago, any, I guess, thoughts on how that's performed for you guys as a department?
Sure. We've had our squad car cameras longer than that, but the body cameras themselves, and obviously there's some laws are different for body cam than fleet cam and that type of thing, and so we can't be as liberal with those videos as the other stuff. However, that being said, by far, and I can't think of an instance where it hasn't done this, if we receive a complaint from a citizen or any other member of the public, if they even don't happen to be a citizen of Hutchinson, and we've had a chance to review body camera footage almost without fail. Matter of fact, like I said, I can't remember a time where this hasn't been the case. It has come out that the officer acted appropriately, professional, and either the perspective of the complainant was skewed, or they may have had an ulterior motive, or what have you. But by far, it has been worth the money, even though it's huge expense. It's by far been a lifesaver. I mean, I wouldn't operate without it, even if I had the choice.
Thanks.
Anything else for Chief Gipperson?
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you and your staff for the great job you guys doing, the service you provide to the city.
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll go into the public hearing. First one, assessment hearing and project award for the 2023 pavement improvement projects, letting number 2, projects number 22-02, 23-02, and 22-03. And we have 2 resolutions underneath there. Resolution number 15581, resolution accepting bids and awarding contract, And resolution number 15582, resolution adopting assessments. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening. Start over, all right. Yeah, as said, we are presenting tonight on the pavement improvement projects. Again, we have three different projects comprised of this, two roadway projects and one a trail project. The here shows kind of where we're at in the process. Again, tonight with the assessment hearing and hopefully the project award, you can see kind of the steps that have led up to this at this point. This is a quick overview of the three projects. The two roadway projects are in red. The trail project is in yellow. The school road project runs from Golf Course Road up to North High Drive. Century Avenue runs from Dale Street to Boston. And then Linden runs, or excuse me, the trail project runs from Grove Street to Linden, running east and then a little bit stretched north. We'll start with the Century Avenue project itself. This is showing it on the very west end portion as it starts at the intersection there at Dale Street. And as we continue to move east here, past Blackhawk Drive, continuing down past the fairgrounds, Oaks and Pines, continuing on. I should mention here too, there will be some minor curb and gutter work, but this is a mill and overlay project. So generally the work is getting done curb to curb with some other minor work getting done as part of the project itself. I should also highlight here before we move off of Century, both Century and School Road has roughly a 6-week construction window that we're giving the contractors, of which they have 4 weeks to complete the project. The Century Avenue portion, has been noted, runs past the fairgrounds, so we're very mindful of the fair in April, a lot of other events that they host at the fairgrounds itself. So June, early June through about mid-July is kind of the 6-week window they're given, with again 4 weeks to be done. There's also coordination with the county because of course Airport Road it has the potential to be done out from Highway 22 all the way past and to the west, past again the fairgrounds. And then we of course have some bridge rehabilitation, Roberts Road that we had presented on earlier, and potentially Jefferson Street if the highway projects, the county's projects go through. So the coordination of all that for the community is important as we go through this summer. And then finally, as we get to the east, it goes and meets the concrete portion just off of Highway 15 at Century Avenue. So it'll go through that intersection and then end just where the concrete is met there on Century Avenue. Jumping over to School Road, this one starts off from Golf Course Road and again runs east and north, continues north through this portion itself, continuing past 12th Avenue, and then again where it meets North High or 12th, or County Road 12 from that standpoint. And then finally, the Highway 15 South Trail Project. Again, this is some infill. It replaces the sidewalk in place. Folks have probably seen the X's that mark the trees in the various areas. We have some tree removal to do in that portion of the project. Again, we'll pick up at Grove Street, as shown in this photo, running to the east and then eventually north where it will meet Linden. This work kind of finishes out what had been done as part of the 2020 Highway 15 project, where a lot of the ped ramps and things had been installed. So this kind of finishes out that project, taking sidewalk, concrete sidewalk, and replacing with 10-foot trail, and continues that portion, and then again meets up. The funding, again, we're anticipating a large portion of the project. Both of the highway projects qualify for state aid. So as you will see there noted, all three of the projects as it was bundled came in under budget. As you saw in your documents tonight, again, about 15% under the engineer's estimates. So total project costs, we're looking at
around $547,000. Combination municipal state aid and assessments will round out the project itself. We'll show the assessments here, proposed assessments for the Century Avenue portion itself. The areas highlighted in yellow indicate the proposed assessments. The blue are exempt because of the rear yard portion of the assessment. This again is the west portion of the project itself. And then this is the east portion with, again, the highlighted sections being the proposed assessed areas. We use a front foot assessment method for this portion of the project. And then jumping over to School Road, we use a, John will give you the fixed cost assessment method. Both are outlined in our assessment policy itself. On this west portion of the project, you'll see the red boxes indicate, and again, it's a 66 by 132. It's really more of a unit of measurement than it is suggesting that this is a development or a proposed concept drawing of any sort. This is really more just to configure, come up with the assessment using the fixed cost portion of it. This is again the west portion of School Road, and then this being the east portion with 10 potential, or the 10 units there as shown to come up with the assessment cost itself. And then the upper and north portion of it, 2 are exempt here because they're considered rear yards because they are adjacent to the cul-de-sac that comes off of that portion, as you can see. And then the other 2 portions, you will note the assessment for those. And then finally, this final slide, which again details the funding makeup of the project. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Mike?
No.
No. Open it up for public comment.
Mayor and Council, a couple things I want to note. First off, we've got our resolutions backwards on your agenda. So 81 is actually, or 15581 is actually the assessment role, and 15582 is actually the bid and the awarding of the contract, just so we notice that, just a typo error on the agenda. This is the portion of the hearing where we will allow public comment on the proposed assessment role that's been delivered to the public. I do want to note for the council, as included on your desk, that we did receive a written objection to the proposed special assessment. I would note that for the record. And one other thing too, since we are in conversation with that property owner, that we are asking the council to continue the public hearing to March 28th. And so what that means is that we will take public comment tonight, but we are not going to close the public hearing. So basically, we will continue that public hearing until March 28th at 6 o'clock. We'd ask you to set that to 6 o'clock. And then along with that, we would also ask that you table the official adopting of the assessment role. But with that being said, we've obviously scheduled the public hearing, so we should at least open that up for public comment. And then before you close it, I'm not going to ask that you close it. We're going to ask that you continue it to 6 p.m. on March 28th. Like I said, this is a moment for the public to provide any public comment or feedback to the council. And public does have the right to provide a written objection to the assessments as well. So, please come forward, state your name and record for the record. Name and address for the record, sorry.
Hello. Hi, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Mark Bullard, and the property is 951 Golf Course Road. We are that west property that has the 6 lots that are, I would call them hypothetical lots, but like you had mentioned, for the funding purposes. So this property's been in our family for 55 years. My mom and dad, that'd be Chuck and Barb Bullard, purchased the property in 1968. And then my wife Laura and I purchased the property in 2020. So we've been the owners for 2 years. Yeah, we love the property. We try to maintain it and keep it in the best shape possible. Looking back over the last 40 years, there have been 8 assessments or proposed or considered assessments. Of those 8 assessments, the total, just on the principal proposed amounts, is approximately $244,000. So $244,000, 8 proposed assessments, so quite a bit of assessments over the years. The actual principal amount that has been paid on that has been $51,000. So that's why I'm here tonight. That's why my wife and I are here tonight, is to just address our concern over the assessments. We've been working with the city. They've been phenomenal in trying to work toward a resolution. So our goal, without dwelling on the past, is to look forward, and that is to come up with solutions. So like I said, we're in the process of doing that right now. We really appreciate that transparency and open book communication with the city. So we appreciate that going forward here, and we are confident and hopeful that we can get to a solution. So in closing here, we would just like to, again, reach a solution that's beneficial to the city as well as to us as property owners. And we welcome that opportunity to continue discussions with the city. So any questions from anyone at this time? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Any other want to address the council?
So the request from the staff would be the council, for the council then would be to actually motion to continue the public hearing until 6:00 PM on March 28th.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Pat and let Dave continue it to the 28th at 6 PM.
Correct.
Follow motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
So you do still have 2 resolutions on there, one being the resolution to accept the bid and award the contract, which staff would still recommend that you do. And the second one is the resolution to adopt the assessment, of which we would ask that you table motion on that assessment. You should handle those one at a time. So
Motion first to accept the bid as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion by Pat, second by Tim to accept the bid as presented. Any other discussion?
Bid.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
and there should be a motion to table the resolution 15581, which
Motion to table resolution 15581 until
March 28th.
I'll second that.
6 PM.
Motion by Pat, second by Tim to table till the 28th. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. All right, the second one is, second public hearing is Uptown Grant Sanitary Sewer Realignment. Letting number 5, project number 23-06. 2 resolutions underneath there. We have resolution number 15585, resolution ordering improvement and preparation of plans and specifications. And resolution number 15586, resolution approving plans and specification and ordering advertisements for bid. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, members of the audience. Just by way of introduction, my name is Justin Black, and I'm serving as the city engineer. Tonight is the first of two public hearings for projects. It's sometimes referred to as the improvement hearing. There'll also be an assessment hearing in a couple of months after we open bids on the project. But tonight, improvement hearing focuses in on the scope of work, what we're doing on the project, the costs and funding, and then we do talk a little bit about the assessment. So I have about 5 slides here where we'll cover the project and take them one at a time. The first is the project location, and just to orientate yourself, north is up on this map. You can just see the edge of Otter Lake here, and we're about a half a block off of State Highway 15 and be just off the edge of the map. So the project includes Glen, First, and Franklin. The project is both a utility and street improvement. As the name implies, the Uptown Grand, it's a sanitary sewer realignment for the redevelopment of the neighborhood. Where you see the 126 parcel here is the proposed Uptown Grand apartment complex. The red line that runs through the middle of the block is the existing sanitary sewer line. As part of this project, that sanitary sewer line will be abandoned and it'll be realigned within the streets, the green line, so about 3 blocks. It's worth noting that there is existing sanitary sewer both on First and on Franklin. So as part of the realignment, if you will, we'll be, in a sense, replacing those 2 blocks of sanitary sewer. Those 2 blocks are older vitrified clay pipe sanitary sewer. We'll be replacing it with new watertight PVC sanitary sewer. So that's the alignment of the new sanitary sewer. In addition to that, we'll be partially rebuilding the street. We'll be rebuilding the pavement surface. The curb and gutters will remain in place, but we'll be grinding up the pavement, putting down a new base, and then repaving the street surface from curb to curb. There will be some storm sewer improvements made at the intersection of Cedar and Glen. We'll be replacing some of those catch basins, and then some of the stormwater from these streets will be redirected into a proposed stormwater pond that'll be constructed as part of the Uptown Grand apartment complex. So we're leveraging that stormwater pond to treat some of the water coming off the streets before it goes into the lake. With that, I want to move to another slide that talks a little bit about access. We're going to zoom out a little bit here. The gray shading shows the project location. So as we're rebuilding that sanitary sewer, realigning it, it's about 10 to 15 feet deep. So we're going to have a deep trench going through there. While they're digging that, we won't be able to have vehicles on these streets. You can see we're proposing some road closures. But we wanted to point out that we will maintain access here in the intersection of Glen and First. So the houses that are off a block or so on Cedar and First can continue to get through that area even during the deep utility construction. So that's just a snapshot of how we propose to maintain some of the traffic in the area. From a cost and funding standpoint, similar to the slide that was just shown a minute ago, the costs are on the left-hand side, including the construction and engineering costs, totaling about $630,000. From a funding standpoint, you can see there's a number of funding sources, about a half a dozen funding sources to cover the cost of the project. The lion's share of the cost is covered by the sewer fund, about $240,000, or almost 40%. The last line item is the special assessments, so about $74,000 or 12% of the total project cost. The $630,000 is covered by special assessments. So as I mentioned earlier, we will talk a little bit about those estimated assessment amounts. The map in front of you shows the parcels that are being specially assessed. So again, Glen, First, Franklin, this is the Uptown Grand apartment complex, proposed apartment complex. The parcels that are, I'll say, on the outer edge of the project all have the side yard credit. So those parcels are receiving that credit, and an assessment doesn't apply to those. The parcels that are being assessed are shown here, highlighted along with their assessment amounts. You can see these 2 houses on the very north end have already been purchased by the city. So they're owned by the city. We do show an assessment, what the assessment amount would be. And then there's 3 parcels here in what would be the southwest corner of Glen and First that are being assessed. You can see the assessment amount for each of these based on the front footage of the lot, about $5,400. The developer is being assessed for their lot or their portion, about $25,000. And then again, over on the right-hand side here of the map, we've got a mix of both private and city lots. These lighter colored ones are city-owned parcels, and the private ones are shown in kind of the maroon or red shading. Again, the assessment about $5,400. So that's a snapshot of what the assessments look like. As the previous slide showed, it's just a small portion of the total project cost. So with that, turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
There it is.
Reason, Justin, is we're just to get that out of where the new project is going up the ground.
Yes, that's correct. That's really what's driving the project, is to reroute that sanitary sewer. But as mentioned, there's a couple of blocks of existing sanitary sewer that will be in effect replacing as part of that realignment, and then rebuilding the street surface itself. So,
This is obviously a unique lot, but I'm gonna ask the question, do we know what the history is and why they put a sanitary sewer right through the middle of a block with a bunch of
I
homes
don't.
and property?
They dug it in by hand.
Okay.
So it's that old, sure.
So John, was that under the original medical center?
It'd be just to the original medical center would be just to the south of that.
Yeah, that's just run to the north, on that north.
Yeah, on that pad, right about where the 126.
Well, you can see the entrance pad there, right there. That'd be the driveway to the.
It's a very old line, so very.
Well, if it's clay, yeah. So those lots to the bottom on First, would they have a chance, John, to hook up, no, down be on the south side of First?
Down here?
Yep, those there, would they have a chance, or they go out to the other way? Okay.
That's why they're considered
Okay,
corner lot credits. So,
all right.
They go along Franklin and Glen.
Dr. Keel's office does connect up,
That's the 85,
correct?
Yeah.
He would get a new connection on it.
okay. Any other questions? Open it up for public comment.
yep, public, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
On the existing sanitary sewer, are you gonna remove that, or are you gonna leave it as is?
We'll remove it.
You'll remove it?
Yeah, we'll remove it. It follows the same alignment as the new.
Thank you.
Similar to the previous hearing that was held, this is a little bit different in that we're seeking public comment if there is any on the proposed project, where the previous public hearing was on the assessment, as Justin noted. If the council decides to move forward with it, there would be an assessment hearing at a future date, assuming we're comfortable with the bids that we would receive on it. But this, the main focus of this is for the public to provide feedback to the council on the project that's being proposed. So, previous to that, just ask you come forward, state your name and address for the record.
All right, good evening, council. My name is Matthew Fitzgerald. I live up on just a block up the road at 316 First Avenue Northwest. A question and clarification. Could you go back to the impact area? There's quite a few neighbors in the room here tonight that are concerned when we received the letter about this project, and so I think this is sort of our first opportunity to speak to the council about that. And our concerns probably are broader than a single sewer pipe. It's about the impact of the neighborhood and property values, traffic, assessments, and that sort of thing. So there may be some other opportunities to have that conversation after this. Is there going to be, could you clarify the additional processes for the hearings regarding this larger project timeline?
Are you referring to the assessment hearing?
The development project.
The development project? I guess I would maybe refer
That'd be a question for the
Matt.
council.
As far as I know, they have not submitted a project plans and specs. So this isn't a hearing for the project itself.
Yep.
My understanding is, I think they're looking, if they start early, it would be the fall
Yep.
of 2020, this year, most likely spring of 2024. I'm not sure if that's gone, if that needs to be rezoned. I don't think we've received any information yet, so.
So you have questions like regarding traffic?
Well, traffic, we received a letter saying that we were going to be assessed for this project.
So the letter that was sent out to the surrounding neighborhood was just making them aware of the project itself. And as part of that form letter, there is information about special assessments. However, if we take a look at the properties that are actually being assessed, they're the only property shown on this map. So if you're not one of these properties that is listed, you are not receiving an assessment.
Okay.
So we try to cover a broader area.
Good to be proactive. Thanks for the information.
Yes.
So you will have access off that corner, like he said, off this bottom corner, that intersection will be accessible, for you guys to use.
Wasn't first,
Glen and First there, that corner.
And as we get closer to construction, at this point, we're very early on in the process. We're not at the point even where we have a contractor on board. But as we get closer to construction, there'll be additional information about construction start dates and those types of things. So more information coming.
Okay,
from that.
thank you very much.
Yep. Any other comment?
Council?
Hey.
My name is Jeff Davis. I reside at 335 First Avenue Northwest, just across the street from Matthew. I share some of the concerns as he does with the traffic situation, considering MITGI and their implementation of the old Shopco building, the influx of traffic that's going to be involved in that, as well as the implementation of potential 75-unit apartment complex. Obviously, we don't understand the full spec of what their plans are at this point, but that is a tremendous impact in traffic. If you've traveled both east to west on First Avenue trying to cross 15, you're dealing with traffic backing out of parking locations at the Dairy Queen as well as the smoke shop. Numerous instances where I've been stuck in the middle of 15, not being able to actually cross that street. You increase the amount of traffic that's going to be coming through there, or traffic trying to resolve around that. It's going to create more traffic within the residential area around that as well. Some other concerns that we have is currently, and we have some other neighbors that probably share this concern, that this project is probably being pushed forward specifically for this contractor. The condition of those roads, First Avenue, Franklin, and Glen, in those situations currently are in fair condition. Considering ripping up those roads to reroute sewer line that actually continues down Cedar and into the back part of my property in the same condition, or the same age, but not being assessed or not being resolved, what is the full resolution of that long term? And where does that run? I mean, that may run across potential properties that the old one runs through as well. I was under the misunderstanding too initially, until I came to the Wednesday meeting, that we were being assessed through the whole full route of First Avenue. At least that's how it was perceived. So those are some concerns that we have, and the family that owns 125 also owns 145 and 135, and they're going to be extremely burdened with that cost of that assessment for something that's essentially being driven for a contractor for development. I'm not opposed to growth in Hutchinson. I'm not opposed to affordable housing if that's what we're pushing for. But I think there's a lot of considerations that still need to be made that are on the table. So, any questions for me, Councilor?
I need to clarify, just so everyone's aware, the hearing is for strictly the moving of the sewer line and the street repair. It's not on the proposed development. There potentially will be a hearing on the proposed development depending on what the applicant brings forth. I will say, to address your concerns, we know we have to move that line either which way. Even if that stays as bare land, and it goes under those homes at some point in the future, whether it's this year or 2, 3, 4, 10 years down the road, that line's gonna have to get moved because it's going right through the middle of property lots, which, as we know, we don't do that today when we're building. So I think that's a fair question to ask the council, whether or not they should be moving that line at this time. I know there's a lot of questions on the development. Unfortunately, that's not the purpose of this hearing tonight. Just as a point of clarification.
Well, John, I think you can attest to this. If it's clay, it's pretty close to being.
I think a helpful piece will for everyone's information will be the sewer that's to the west of Glen Street. So the one that runs kind of in your front yard there, that one was lined from there all the way up as it follows the river. So we actually lined that with several years ago. So it's as if it were a
Like a
plastic
rubber
line.
lining of some sort.
Right, it's a solid lining that was put in, but we stopped it here knowing that we're gonna have that, that line crossing the middle of lots. So from this point at Cedar and Glen to the west, all the way along the river, all the way up to roughly Harmony Lane area, it's been lined.
There were 2 residents here this past year that had significant sewer issues running from their property into that post that
Sure, right.
where they had substantial replacements that had to be done.
Okay.
And that's within 100 feet of each other.
Yeah, those I wasn't aware of specific, if that's related to the service itself. So,
I'm not specifically
Yeah,
certain
okay.
what that is, but
Sure.
From their house to the street.
Yeah, from
Maybe
house
issues
to-
on the main.
they were responsible for that portion of it. Again,
Yeah.
whether it's determined whether or not it was
Dollars
tied to
Right.
something.
Help offset that also.
So I felt like that might help clarify kind of another reason. We stopped there knowing that at some point that's gonna have to go away, so.
I don't think that's true. It went all the way to Franklin.
You think so?
Yeah, I know so.
Okay,
I'm at 125 Glen Street.
okay. Well, I hope, it's possible, that's not what I read, so,
I've got
yeah, okay, well, very good. Then in that case, yeah, that's okay, if it went all the way to Franklin, that's fine. So, all right.
Council? I'm Jean Witt. I'm owner of 125, 135, and 145, the assessed properties. My question is, do you have a timeline, ballpark, when this would start, when this road work would start?
As mentioned, we don't have a contractor on board, and until we go take that step, we'll get a more detailed contract schedule. Right now, I would estimate sometime in the July, August timeframe would likely be when the project would occur. But as mentioned before, once we get a little bit closer to the date, we'll send out more information. It'll be this summer, and probably a 6 to 8 week duration is what we're looking at.
Well, my concern is that completely surrounds our house.
Sure.
Our houses, if we were to sell, how do we get moved?
Okay, I think we'll have to work with you as far as there's a way we can work with the contractor and with you to schedule a time when we can get your moving truck in there. Either
I'm just
before
saying, if we move.
Sure. Either before the sanitary sewer pipe is installed or after. So keep in mind, once that sanitary sewer pipe is installed, they'll restore the roadway and fill the trenches up, and we'll provide some temporary access. So I think that's definitely something we can overcome.
Justin, maybe you want to touch on the requirement of the city and the contractor to provide access to these property owners.
Yeah, so again, once the sanitary sewer work is completed, access will be restored. So they'll use temporary gravel roadways to get you in and out of your driveway. We've seen this in a number of other reconstruction projects that are surrounding neighborhoods or surrounding homes. So we do everything we can to provide access as much as we can during the project. So that's something that we work with, and we provide periodic updates too.
Okay. And I assume you're just gonna have one road torn up at a time, not all three?
All three will be torn up at the same time. Just an efficiency of the construction, when they come in and remove the pavement, they remove it all at once. The sanitary sewer will occur over the course of maybe a week as they dig in that pipe from one end to the other. But again, as they finish the pipe work and fill the trenches back in, they'll put in temporary gravel surfacing to get you in and out of your homes.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Pat, second by Tim to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Got
Carried.
record.
You have can we do both resolutions at once?
That's the desire of the council, yes.
A motion to do both resolutions?
Motion to, for resolution 15585 and 15586 to order the improvement and preparation plans and to approve the plans for specifications and ordering advertisement for bids.
Second.
Motion by Pat, second by Tim to approve both resolutions. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do not have any unfinished business. Under new business, we have resolution number 15577. Resolution transferring from the general and community improvement funds to the capital project fund.
Excuse me.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. So back in January of 2022, the council approved a project at the Civic Arena that essentially replaced the roof and did some structural work as well. And that project came in much higher than we had expected, a little over $2.5 million in cost. And this project would typically run through our facility committee, our facility plan, which receives annual funding of about $700,000 a year. So obviously we knew the cost of this project exceeded our funding capability within that facility committee. So we knew at the time we would need some other city reserves to fill that gap, and that's why I'm here tonight. We need about $1.3 million from other city funds, and with the project substantially complete at the end of 2022, we need to transfer some monies to fund that shortfall as of the end of 2022. So the top of this sheet that I'm showing you tonight has our three typical funds that we look at for dipping into for reserves to fund certain projects. Community Improvement Fund is one of our bigger funds with a current unreserved fund balance of a little over $2.6 million. The Capital Projects Fund is showing a negative balance at this point, just simply because the facility plan sits within that fund and is currently in a deficit because of this Civic Arena project. And then the General Fund, we're showing about $1.24 million of unreserved funds as well that can be used for any purpose that City Council deems. And just speaking of the general fund, I want to flip back down. I'm going to take you to a few different spots, but down at the bottom, just want to hit on the general fund balance just to show you where we're sitting. At the end of the year, end of 2022, I'm estimating we're going to have a fund balance of just over $8.4 million, which represents 58.6% of our budgeted expenditures for 2023. So very healthy fund balance percentage. We carve out 40% for our working capital, and that allows us to pay our bills on a month-to-month basis. And then 10% for emergencies, tax stabilization. That leaves us with that $1.24 million of unreserved fund balance to be used for any purpose. If we use 500,000 of that for this Civic Arena project, that gives us adjusted unreserved fund balance of a little over 740,000. And then that would bring our fund balance down from the 58.6 to 55.2%. So still fairly healthy fund balance for the general fund. This middle section here, I just wanted to show you what all goes through the capital projects fund, because it's not just the facility plan. We have several other initiatives that we actually reserve funds for: playgrounds, miscellaneous infrastructure maintenance, planning funds, and then we also receive donations that are supposed to be used for specific purposes. So right now, at the end of 2022, we have total reserve funds of $767,000. As you can see, our facility plan is overdrawn at 1.3 million deficit. And then our other total unreserved funds about 855,000. So we really need to rectify this issue, the $1.3 million. Otherwise, some of those other initiatives will suffer if we don't fund it. So the proposal I have in front of you tonight is to fund $800,000 out of the Community Improvement Fund, which still leaves us with about $1.85 million of unreserved funds. That $500,000, as I mentioned, out of the general fund, which would leave us with $740,000 above that 50% fund balance amount, and then replenishing the capital projects fund with that 1.3 million would give us a total unreserved cash balance of 855,000 roughly. So our three different funds would still have some fairly healthy fund balances after this funding for the Civic Arena. So with this said, I wanted to also show you the police facility funding, because there may be what we decide tonight on the Civic Arena could possibly have ramifications on the police funding. So the top of this sheet, I have the costs of the PD on the top left, at this point estimated at a total of about 14.9 million. On the right side, we have our different funding sources, with the majority being funded by debt that we issued through bonds. And then we have another $2,045,000 of committed funds out of the Community Improvement Fund. Several years ago, the council committed $3 million of those community improvement funds to be used for the PD. And at the bottom of the spreadsheet, you can see we'll have used a little over $2 million for paying direct costs on the project. Then we used another $955,000 to retire some debt that had much higher interest rates, and that helped to soften the impact of the new debt that we brought on with the PD. We look to receive about another $250,000 from the state in sales tax refunds on the materials that were purchased during the project. And then that just leaves a funding gap of about $965,000. And these are estimates at this point. We'll know more here middle of the year when the project's complete, but looking like we need about $965,000 of funds. And technically, what I'm seeing is it's possibly just a temporary funding. I'm not sure when we're going to be selling the existing PD or the EOC. If that'll happen in 2023, then we won't need this other city funding. That the proceeds from those sales will essentially come in here and fill the gap, hopefully. But I'm kind of assuming worst case scenario is those two properties aren't sold until after this year. We would just need some short-term funding to get us until those sales proceeds are received. So this middle section here shows our three funds that we, again, typically look at for funding projects. And the Community Improvement Fund at this point is the most healthy, and since it's at this point a temporary funding until those EOC proceeds are received and the PD proceeds are received, it's really kind of a net wash. Little bit of a drain on the community improvement funds. But at the end of the day, still very healthy cash balances within these funds that are available for the city council to use at your discretion. And just as a reminder, we have other funds, other monies earmarked within those funds that I'm not showing you, but those are earmarked for specific purposes. So at this point, the resolution that I have in front of you tonight is basically funding the Civic Arena roof project, $800,000 out of the Community Improvement Fund and $500,000 out of the general fund. I feel comfortable with those numbers. The one thing we always have to be cautious with, general fund, is each year when we issue debt, the bond rating agencies really look hard at our general fund balance, and that's a sign of health to them. That gives investors the assurance that we have monies to pay back our debts, pay their investments back. So we need to be cautious, but $500,000 coming out of the general fund and leaving us with still 55.2%, still very healthy, as I mentioned earlier, considering the state auditor recommends a fund balance between 40 and 50%, a minimum fund balance. So we're above that level even after funding 500,000. And that's not to say if hoping that my estimate for the proceeds on the sale of the PD and EOC are conservative. If it comes in higher, as I would hope, there's always an opportunity that City Council could transfer monies back into the general fund. As we did 5-6 years ago, we financed the water park with $500,000 out of the general fund. But then when we received those hospital lease payment payoff, we received over $6 million from the hospital back in 2018. We use those monies to reimburse that $500,000. So there's always that opportunity. If we come into a little more money on those proceeds, we can reimburse the general fund if that's what council would desire. So for tonight, just this transfer to get our books right for the year-end audit of 2022. So at this point, I'll open it up to any questions you might have.
Andy, I mean, I know it was COVID and everything, but what was the main reason for that Civic Arena? And I should know this because we went through it before, but to go so much over, was it just the COVID-related delays? And I mean, that's a lot.
It was.
Honestly, I don't like transfers to be completely honest, but I mean, I get that it has to be done.
JJ's probably better to talk about it. I think there was some definite cost impacts from the COVID, but I also think we just underestimated. Sometimes with our facility plan, it's not feasible to really go out and get a solid quote for a contractor if you're not planning a project for 2-3 years. So we just had some internal estimates, but yeah, we missed it by $1 million on that one.
I think, Pat, and this is just some history because Pat wasn't I don't think you were on the council on the time. Yeah, we had estimated, I think the project cost to be about 1.8 million. And it was nowhere near our estimate.
Really? I remember coming up.
Yeah, and the council said at that point, we felt like it was important for us to do it still. Yep.
I get it.
Yep, and yeah,
I don't like
it was one of those where I don't know if we had I think we had done an estimate probably 5 years prior to that, and I don't know if it was updated.
JJ, didn't we have some unseen things that went on too that added to the cost?
I think there was a lot of structural subframing that had to go along with the IMP and the masonry brickwork that I don't think we had considered initially.
I think once we got dug into it, I think there was some things that we had to take care of just to get the project done.
Yeah, and we did kick this one down the road quite a ways. I think when I first started here in 2011, I think it was on one of our capital plans way back then even.
I believe it was originally supposed to get done in 14 or 15, and then we decided to build the aquatic center, and so we just kept pushing it back, and I think that played into it as well.
So glad my boys rested. I can never state that enough. I get it has to be done. Ouch, you can't abandon the city things like this. But
tell you the truth, if you drive by those two facilities now, you would think that they were...
Yeah, they're top notch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the question for you guys, are you comfortable with the reserves after this funding? That would be the main concern.
I think I am.
It's always prideful when you can see larger ones, so anytime you nip into that.
Right.
And I will say...
One of the key things I think that you said when you said that our bond rating, if it's from 45 to 50, which we're above that still, I feel comfortable with that.
One of the things that we had a couple conversations over the last couple of years, and obviously we have a new council now, and so that's we could always have those conversations again. As Andy noted, I think the auditor has said 40% is what they'd like to see for a general fund balance. We've said we want to keep it at least 50%. And we've identified anything over 50% is really for the council to decide for projects similar to this.
Something like this.
And as Andy has shown, even with the $500, we're still at 55% of our, so you could say, we built ourselves some cushion for specific projects that the council deems they feel is in the benefit of the community, so.
Oh, I have no doubt we need to do it, and it's a great facility.
Well, and I think one thing too is that we've had a lot of interest in the old police station, so I think that that sale will probably happen pretty quickly. But, hopefully.
Mayor, do you see that money going back into the reserve then?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right, correct, Andy, any monies received from the old police station would.
Right. If it's received in 2022, we can apply it towards the project itself. I'm just or 2023, I'm just anticipating worst case scenario it sells in 2024 if we move a little slower.
If you're comfortable with it,
Motion to approve resolution 15577, transferring funds from general and community improvement funds to the capital budget.
I'll second it. Motion by Pat, second by myself to approve resolution number 15577. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Moving on, Birch Arena East Rink Gutter Downspout Drainage Project. Good evening, Lynn.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Now that you just made that funding whole, I'm here to ask you for some more.
Poor timing, Lynn.
Poor timing. I should have not followed you.
Never follow the finance director.
Yeah.
So.
One before him. As identified with the Facilities Committee, this project has been discussed as a kind of a little bit of an afterthought, but to complete the East Rink Birch Arena project, it's been identified that there's a need to do a gutter and downspout drainage project that would then close out this project that we've been working on. It's been vetted through the Facilities Committee and recommended for the project to take place in spring of 2023. Included in your packet this evening are plans and specifications from ISG that they drew up for the project, which would help mitigate the runoff from the building and the pooling in the parking lot and on the sidewalks. And the north side of the building gets virtually no sun, especially during the winter months. So there's some ice issues there. So this would connect the north side of the roof gutters and downspouts to the underground piping leading to the existing stormwater in the parking lot, and it will also add underground drainage tile along the building. So this would help mitigate those issues that we see in that parking lot along the sidewalk and the north side of the building. Also included in your packet are two quotes that the city obtained from two contractors that came in. One came in at $69,955, and then the other one $72,477.80. It was recommended from the facility committee to move forward with the lower bid, and recommends that the council approve the project so we can continue or finalize the project and have the work completed this spring.
What would be your estimated time slot?
It would get done this spring, so as soon as it's approved, we would work with the contractor to get it on their schedule and then hopefully get it done as soon as possible.
You want this done before you pave the parking lot, I assume?
The parking lot's already been paved. There would be no
Nothing in the
nothing
parking
from the
lot.
existing parking lot, no.
All right.
They won't have to rip anything up, I don't think. No, pipe's already there, they're just connecting to it.
Yeah, Dave, we actually planned for this when we paved the parking lot. Was that 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
We knew that we were eventually gonna have to hook in some drainage into
So
that.
they stubbed it out.
Yeah.
I thought there was part of that drainage system that went underneath the, part of the parking lot.
Just connecting
Connects
to it.
into something that's already there.
Yeah.
So.
Motion to approve Birch Arena East Rink Gutter Downspout Drainage Project.
Second.
Motion by Pat, second by Dave to approve the project. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
City Center parking lot replacement.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm here on behalf of Facility Committee again to request approval to replace the City Center parking lot right outside here. I believe in front of you have two quotes from Bertram Asphalt and W.M. Mueller. W.M. Mueller being the lowest of the two bids. We felt that the bids are favorable at this time to proceed with this project. It's been on the CIP for a few years, being kicked down the road to allow for other projects to get completed. So I don't know, there's too much, you might have a plan there of the parking lot itself. It will be existing as it sits right now, which would also include the alleyway to the south.
John, with this, is there any plans for any drainage problems that should be taken care of when doing this project? Okay.
Motion to approve city center parking lot replacement.
All second.
Motion by Pat, second by Tim to approve the city center parking lot replacement project. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, JJ. Moving on, we have governance, we have, the minutes from the public arts, minutes from January 8th, 2023. Staff update. Lynn, do you have anything else for us?
Don't ask for any more money.
I'm not gonna ask for any more money, I promise.
No more money?
Not tonight. I just wanted to make mention, we have two very long-standing employees retiring from the Parks, Rec, and Community Education Department. Marv Haugen, who served as our Recreation Facilities Operations Manager for 42 and a half years. He retired yesterday from our department. And then also John McGrath, who is our Recreation Services Coordinator. He will be retiring after 41 and almost 42 years, so he didn't quite make it to 42, but just wanted to thank them for their service to the city of Hutchinson and to our department. A lot of what we have and that we do, we take for granted every day, and they were a big part of all those things that we are so grateful to have here through our Parks, Rec, and Community Education Department. They didn't want any type of formal celebration, so here I am tonight just to thank them for you guys. If you see them out and about, make sure you tell them thank you for their service and wish them best as they move on to their next chapter of their life. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention is the city of Hutchinson. We worked, many departments within the city, we worked on our bicycle-friendly community application, which was submitted in February of this year. Currently, there's a community survey out there that goes along with the designation. We currently hold a bronze designation for our community, and we've been working really hard to hopefully move up to a silver designation. And this community survey can help the people that are reviewing our application get a better understanding of Hutchinson and what we have to offer here for bicycle and pedestrian traffic. So I would encourage anyone, if they are able to take the survey. It only takes about 5 minutes. It's online. We'll put it on the website. We have it out on our PRCE Facebook page, also the City of Hutchinson Facebook page. And just share it with your neighbors, your friends. Take it. The more responses we get, the more information they will gather about our community and hopefully gain a better understanding. And we should find out in May of 2023 what our new designation will be.
Pretty simple. I was able to navigate it and fill it out. It's short.
Short and sweet.
Yeah.
But that's all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Andy, you got anything else for us tonight?
Nothing.
John, actually, I since everybody's talking about all the water we're gonna have, I contacted John and asked him if we got flood planning.
Yeah.
So he was,
If it flooded last year, it'll probably flood this year again. No, late last week, the likelihood of spring flooding was upgraded to well above normal. Any major flooding will depend, of course, on rainfall and snow melt as we move through March into April. One of the things working against us is the snow remaining on the ground is some of the deepest on record for this time of year. And at this point, they're estimating the snow water equivalent is about 6 inches worth of rain. So significant amount of snow still laying out there. The good news is soil moisture is drier than normal due to the moderate and just to the south of us, severe drought that we experienced conditions we had last year. The other good news is frost depths are generally very minimal. So it is very possible that much of the snow melt will infiltrate into the soil rather than running off over frozen ground. So temperatures are forecast to be below normal for the remainder of March. So a long, slow warm-up is preferred to remove some of this snowpack. Precipitation is forecast to be near normal or even above normal for the remainder of March. So again, hopefully nothing severe. All this adds up to what's our chances? Probably a 30% chance of minor flooding, a roughly 10% chance of moderate flooding, and about a 5% chance of major flooding. I did share our plan document with Matt and Mike, and I believe they forwarded it to you.
I got a copy on the desk here too.
Yeah, so the reason we did that is there's a number of links, web links in there that you'll be able to access by using it off what was emailed to you. Big picture items from there is that we do have a supply of sandbags that would be available. We also have some sand. We have some other materials that could be used. We, as public works staff, if we do get flooding, we're not going to be in any kind of position to assist. So we just pretty much say, here it is. And again, as we work through what our typical response is, the first thing to note is a couple of the trails get closed underneath the bridges. Next thing would be 2nd Avenue Bridge. Just to the west of the bridge we'd close down 2nd Avenue. It would start then to affect some of the public facilities along the river. So the Parks Department would be working to primarily deal with the Veterans Memorial Field and some of the other facilities that are along there. Once we get to that point, we also will consult with industries, through the city engineer and Public Works Department to, based on what the forecasts are, we'd be happy to do that at that point. And then, of course, an engineering group, a big part of their job is to keep an eye out on all the bridges and make sure that we don't see any damage from any flooding activities. Public Works itself, we'd probably be most concerned with the water and or the wastewater system and the stormwater systems that we have in place already, and would be working to make sure those are functioning as well as they possibly can. And that's a pretty typical response. I know after the 1997 flood, and then of course later when the concrete dam was removed and it was put in rock weirs as it is today, a lot of the properties along downstream were purchased and removed. flooding, for sure, downstream, river related, doesn't have the impacts that it did many years ago, which is very nice. And there's links on this. We'll put something up on the Public Works website too as well, to make sure that folks can get at that information if they do that. That should come by the week's end, I would think. So, any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, John. John Paulson.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor. A couple items of note tonight. The city has established a date for our annual rain barrel sale. It's Saturday, April 29th from 1 to 4 p.m. Some information will be going out with the utility bills in April to all the residents in the community. Also, information will be able to be found on our website as well. So if it's something of interest in you, by all means, feel free to show up the day of the sale. Otherwise, if that date and time doesn't work for you, feel free to contact me and we can make an alternative arrangement to make that happen. The second item for this evening is relative to the Lakes River Improvement Project. We continue to work and move that project forward. Met earlier today with Soil and Water Conservation District staff, and then Todd Hummer with Bolton and Mink, the engineer of the project, DNR as well, talking about future progress and the projects associated with the improvements there to remove sediment and minimize nutrient loading and erosion that's occurring along segments of the river upstream of Hutchinson. Projects associated with that. We haven't received much public input. We've received some. We haven't specifically went and solicited it, but people have, read about it in the paper, or know about it through word of mouth, have reached out to the city. It's something that we're asking others in the community if it's of interest to you. There has been a Lakes River Association in the past. That I know there's a few people that are involved with that, or were involved with that. Andy Niss and Robert Honke were kind of the leads on that project in the past. It's something that if it's of interest to you as a community member, by all means, feel free to reach out to one of them gentlemen, or feel free to contact me. I can put you in touch with them as well. What we're trying to do is establish more of a open network with communication with members in the community through an avenue such as that, not just to communicate the changes and the improvements that are being proposed here in the coming years, but also to solicit their input and get their feedback on priorities and what's important to them and issues that they see and deal with on a day-to-day basis. So I'm trying to improve that process as a whole. So if there's anyone that is interested in the community, or you hear about anyone in your time out and about, feel free to direct them to one of those two gentlemen, or like I said, I can put them in contact with them as well. So any questions?
John, you want to throw your number out?
Yeah, phone number for my landline at the office here is 320-234-5682. Otherwise, you can email me as well. It's jpaulson@hutchinsonmn.gov. Thank you.
Did you want to give us the price of those barrels, or did you?
What's that?
Did you give the price of the barrels?
The barrels are $70 again this year. They retail for $120, so the city offers them basically at cost. We share a load with multiple communities, so we try to offer that as cheap as possible for folks if they're interested in reuse and collecting that water. It's good for the environment. It's not so good for water sales, but that's okay. It's doing the right thing, and we're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to do that.
Anything else for John?
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Mike, do you have anything for us tonight? No. All right, thank you. Mr. Sabora?
No.
Tim, let's start with you.
Well, good, thank you.
All right. Dave?
It's amazing he has nothing to say, but I have nothing either.
That's more amazing. Pat?
Just for people that tune in, if they do, and for the people that showed up tonight, sometimes I think Tim Reed's felt it too. It's like, hope no one else comes forward with money to spend, but this is all planned out long ahead. Once in a while, like the hockey arena thing, it comes in over. We're committed. It's something we have to continue with, so I hope people don't think we're just up here going, yep, because we get a lot of information that we all read and go through before we hit here, and it was just nice to see people come forward tonight, and we are concerned with their concerns, so that's all I had.
Good point.
Thanks, Pat. Got a couple things. we have a celebrity here, Wrestling Broadcast Award. Pat does play.
Used to retired now.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, they have play-by-play wrestling meets.
Yeah.
I know you can't understand that if you don't wrestle.
Yeah. So, but just want to recognize Connor Hogan, right?
Yeah, what a job.
State champion in 50 freestyle, the 100 butterfly, and those were both with All-American times.
I think Lynn, she knows about swimming. 50 free, if you win that, aren't you considered the fastest person in the state? That's quite an honor.
So something that me and Pat know more about is wrestling. We had two wrestlers that finished second in state runners up. We had Logan Schwantz at 113 and Hayden Vanderwart at 150. 195. I almost said 155, but you know, that was my word. Yeah. But and actually had Gabby Blunberg.
Made history. She
went 2-1 at in the state, and she was a consolation champion at 107 for the girls' state wrestling. So
first year for girls' state, she wrestled the eventual champion and lost. So then she had to wrestle her way back and got 2 pins in a row to take fifth. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
We are wrestling guys, sorry. NCAA's are this weekend. Golf season's.
Just to let you know, huh? Yeah. All right. That's, Matt. I almost forgot about you, didn't I?
That's right. You know, I did want to know, because I think sometimes when we have our public hearings, you know, the public comes up and addresses the council, and a lot of times there's not a feedback. And I would say that's a normal procedure. The public hearing, the purpose of that is for feedback from the public to the council. Now, if there's any specific questions, that's where the council members are there. But it's really meant for the council members to hear that input. It's not necessarily meant as an exchange, a back and forth, just because I think sometimes people come and give public comments and the council doesn't say anything. They go, well, did they even listen to me? And I think it's just important to say that's part of the process. And just also know there's obviously other ways to reach out to the elected officials as well. But I just wanted to clarify that. And then we did put out this week, just a reminder, because people are already asking, but the spring cleanup is Saturday, April 22nd. So that's the hard good, soft good. So we did get that out on social media. And then the fall one would be September 30th. But obviously, we'll remind everybody about that at a later time. But April 22nd, so just over a month away, and hopefully hopefully the snow slowly melts by then. So
either that or they'll be digging the stuff out. Yeah.
Melted by the September one.
Yeah, hopefully it could start all over again by then. So.
Anything else?
No, that's all I have for myself.
So Matt, you're like when the public comment, it'd be surprised how many people approach us when we're out and about that. You know, we get feedback from the public. So yeah. So otherwise, we're going to go into a closed session here. So thanks everybody for coming.
You need to read that first. So
the purpose of this closed session is to develop or consider an offer for the sale of real estate property at 715 Jefferson Street Southeast in the city of Hutchinson under Minnesota Statute 13D.05, subdivision 3C. I would now entertain a motion to go into closed session and discuss the possibility sale of real estate at 715 Jefferson Street Southeast.
So moved.
Motion.
Just a point of order, we put the regular meeting.
Yep.
It's just being recessed.
Yep.
Thank you.
Correct. Yeah, if you want to, you can. You don't have to. So.
Thank you.
All right, motion by Pat, second by Dave to go into closed session to discuss the possible sale of real estate. All in favor say aye.
All right.
Opposed say nay.